Canadian police and members of parliament participated in a parade yesterday that had glorifications of Khalistani terrorists on display. Now, I'm interviewing Bob Ray. He's a former Sikh. What do you make of police, members of parliament, the mayor of Calgary participating in a parade that had Khalistani terrorists on display?
I think this is a terrible representation, not only for Calgarians, but for Canadians in general.
One of the individuals that was being glorified was Talwinder Singh Parmar, the founder of Babbar Khalsa, a terrorist organization recognized by both Canada and India. Who was Talwinder, and why is he being called a Shaheed?
Talwinder Parmar was a self-proclaimed mastermind of the Air India bombing. In reality, he was just a pawn that was manipulated by other higher-ups in organizations in Canada that claimed to have represented Sikhs in Canada and were operating as charitable organizations. When the Air India bombing happened, there was a number of suspects, and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service was supporting the perpetrators of this bombing and condoning their actions because CSIS was destroying evidence in order to shield the true masterminds of the Air India Flight 182 bombing. Talwinder Parmar was just an uneducated, tribal individual. I would be shocked if he even knew how to tie his shoelaces, let alone, go through a full bombing of Flight 182, an attempted bombing of Flight 301. He would have never been able to put this together as just an uneducated terrorist.
Now, yesterday in this parade, he was being celebrated as a Shaheed. What does Shaheed mean?
In the Canadian hijacked Sikh religion that has been hijacked by these nefarious charitable / extremist organizations, Shaheed really has no value. Every terrorist, bandit, extortionist, gangster, they proclaim them as Shaheeds. So the word Shaheed in Punjabi, Canadian, Sikh culture has absolutely zero weight. It means that a person was a criminal.
Who was Bhindranwale? We saw his picture in the parade as well. Was he a terrorist as well?
Bhindranwale was an extremist terrorist that would commit crimes in Punjab, India, and then run into the Golden Temple and play the religious card, so police had a tough time going in there to arrest him. Slowly, Bhindranwale, he assembled a militia of criminal radical extremists that he would remote control from the Golden Temple and send them out to commit crimes, commit robberies, extortions, and then bring the loot back to the Golden Temple and create havoc in the state of Punjab. Many innocent people lost their lives during this reign of terror orchestrated by Bhindranwale from the sacred Golden Temple in Punjab, India.
I see. Well, they call it a religious parade, but it seems to be very political. Are these people like Talwinder Singh Parmar, what do they have to do with the religion?
Absolutely. They are glorifying radical terrorists, killers, extortionists in these parades, and in their temples they display pictures of these violent people throughout their temples, and this was one of the reasons that I had to segregate myself from this hijacked religion in Canada, because I can't support their violent extremist ideologies. What kind of a normal person would want to look at these killers and in a place of worship, in a place that's supposed to be holy? And further to that, the psychological effect of having children listen to these fictitious BS stories that they're propagating in Canada severely causes mental harm to these kids, and I don't think that they should be exposed to violent barbarism.
Speaking of kids, it seems like Canadian Armed Forces brought some kids to participate in the parade as well. How, like, what do you make of the police institutions participating in this parade where terrorists, not only terrorists, not only militants recognized as terrorists by Indian government, but also terrorists and terrorist organizations like Babbar Khalsa and their founders also being glorified?
The Canadian Armed Forces is having a tough time recruiting anybody into their military program in Canada. Nobody wants to join. So I think that they've really, really lowered their standard, and they're, pandering for people to join. So of course, nefarious people will join to obtain, data. The police agencies in Canada at a city level, municipal level, provincial, including federal, have all been compromised by organized crime, extremist, terrorist, radical elements that hold more of a loyalty towards their religion, even if it's extremist, rather than their nation. And I think that in order for a country to prosper, people need to value their nation before religion and not the other way around. We are a modern society, and we don't need uneducated, tribal, violent ideologues telling us what direction we should go. Politicians have further compounded this issue because, for example, in Canada, the Sikh religion has been hijacked by the nefarious World Sikh Organization, and they propagate very well, and they have infiltrated all levels of government, promoting their violent fiction all across the nation.
Let me ask you about that. We had members of parliament participate in this event as well, giving speeches. For example, there was a conservative member and a liberal member. George Hall gave a speech, and his father was a board member of the World Sikh Organization, this so-called nefarious organization that you're talking about. What do you make of George Hall's speech?
I think George Hall is a fool. His father was a rogue Indian national that immigrated to Canada and spawned George. His father was actually the president of the World Sikh Organization, which is a disaster in itself, as the World Sikh Organization had a lot of complicity during the Air India bombing, and the founding president was interrogated many times, but the Canadian Secret Service, CSIS, helped him evade justice.
I would like to ask you more questions about the individuals that were on display at this parade, and one of them being Dilawar Singh Parmar, another member of the Babbar Khalsa, a suicide bomber. What do you make of him being glorified as Shaheed?
Yeah, I don't think he is a Shaheed. I think he is a terrorist, suicide bomber that killed a chief minister, which is the rank of a premier of Punjab. He set a bomb on the premier's car and blew him to smithereens. And I don't think anybody that can take a life of an innocent person can be qualified to be any kind of a Shaheed. And the World Sikh Organization in Canada, they have demented thinking almost to the point that they need assistance because they are psychopathic in their thinking on how they worship killers and promote killers in these widely publicized parades, as well as in probably, I'd say, 90% or more Sikh temples in Canada that are openly displaying pictures of these criminals, terrorists, extortionists, gangsters, and calling them Shaheeds of their religion. What kind of a peaceful religion would want criminals to be regarded as the highest human beings? I mean, this is completely absurd.
What do you make of the politicians who can't keep an arm's distance with these extremist groups like the Khalistanis?
So with politicians, like if it is a Caucasian politician, I give them some benefit of the doubt that they're incompetent. But most of these Punjab politicians in Canada or a background from Punjab are affiliated with the nefarious World Sikh organization. So they propagate anything that their masters, namely Gyan Singh Sandhu and his daughter Talwinder Singh propagate to these extremists.
So you're saying these politicians, whether it be liberal or conservative, who are connected to the World Sikh organization, they're not representing the will of the people, but they have other motives.
The World Sikh organization has hijacked the Sikh religion in Canada through their political influence in the uniparty Liberal, Conservative, NDP governments here. They have allowed mass immigration into the country so that their backed politicians are favorable in winning elections. For example, Harjit Sajjan, Tim Uppal, Amarjeet Sohi, George Chahal, Jazikaran Halan, like these are all rogue individuals. I don't think that they are qualified and have the integrity to represent Canadians. I think that these people are only successful politicians because of the influence the World Sikh organization has and due to mass immigration. When Punjabs immigrate to Canada, they usually go into the Sikh Punjab ghettos, and all of the ghettos are usually controlled by World Sikh organization.
I want to get back to Babbar Khalsa. There were 3 other individuals being glorified who were part of Babbar Khalsa. Sukhdev Singh Babbar, what did he do?
Sukhdev Singh Babbar is just another criminal. He is responsible for many innocent deaths, especially Hindu deaths in Punjab during the 80s and 90s. He was just another criminal that was in the disguise of being a religious person. You know, when they commit crimes and then go pray, they think that that eliminates any sins that they have committed. So they sell the name of God in exchange for committing criminal acts.
How about Shugraj Singh Tufar?
These are all names that are widely propagated by the extremist hijackers of the peaceful Sikh religion. There's nothing special about any of them. Not one of these Sikh Shaheeds has ever done anything of value to their community, to uplift, empower their community. They're simply bandits or criminals. Any politician in Canada that supports these types of individuals and these types of parades with these violent displays has to be removed. They are on a borderline promoting extremism and hatred and violence from Canadian soil.
There are at least 3 terrorist organizations, members or founders being glorified, and these 3 terror organizations are Babbar Khalsa International and Khalistan Liberation Force and Khalistan Commando Force. Babbar Khalsa is recognized as a terrorist organization by Canada. These other 2 are recognized as terrorist organizations in India.
There are many more organizations that are extremist, borderline terrorist promoting organizations operating as charities from Canadian soil. They prey on new immigrants, and their objectives are to collect donations and to defame and slander the reputation of the great emerging powerhouse of the world, India. And the Canadian government, the uniparty, Liberal, Conservative, NDP, in supporting this ideology and hatred towards India, they have destroyed all geopolitical relationships with a very important country, being India. And I think that this type of slander committed from Canadian soil is also interfering in the politics of India. I think that depicting Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the way that these radical Sikhs in Canada have been doing openly on Canadian soil, I think it sets a global precedent that Canada is a mismanaged and a misgoverned country. Not only are politicians pandering, but institutions like the armed forces, the city police agency, CPS, the RCMP, they're participating, and I think that they're lowering their standard, and people are perceiving this as a negative more than a positive.
And another name that was on display was Jaswant Singh Kalra. Who was he? Was he an assassin, suicide bomber, terrorist? They call him a human rights activist, but it's hard, So who was he?
Jaswant Singh Kalra, he was just a puppet of Sikh charitable extremist organizations. And he was propped up in Punjab as a human rights activist. And he was actually the promoter of Sikh violence in Punjab during the 80s and 90s.
Let me ask you about Jyoti Gandhi, the mayor of Calgary, who participated in this event.
Sure.
She would not participate in other events like the candle lighting for the Jewish faith that happened every year in Calgary. She said that was too political and she didn't participate, but now she's at this event where terrorists are being glorified. How do you make sense of it? Who is Jyoti Gandhi? Is she part of World Sikh Organization too?
Every Sikh Punjab politician in Canada, be it a mayor or an MLA or a member of parliament, they all pander to the World Sikh Organization. Jyoti Gandhi is a radical left-wing mayor that is another puppet of the World Sikh Organization. And I found it very troubling that she allowed this extremist parade to create all sorts of chaos in the city of Calgary, and she even gave them, a city park to use to propagate and spew hatred towards India and the Indian government and Hinduism in general. She gave a public space, a park where these extremists set up their stages and promoted their extreme, violent values and principles.
Let me ask you this question then. Jyoti Gandhi is the least liked mayor in the history of Calgary. Amarjit Sohi, you can't find someone who supports or likes him on the street on any given day. You can read the comments on their social media, etc. These two mayors are probably the most hated mayors in the history of Canada. Who is voting for them then? How are they getting into power?
So let's just talk rough numbers here. So say the city of Calgary and Edmonton, they have roughly the same population. Let's say, hypothetically, 1.25 million people, right? Amarjit Sohi became the mayor of Edmonton on less than 150,000 votes, and Jyoti Gandhi also received about 150,000 votes. So 10% of their city's population, which could have been all Punjab votes, elected these two questionable characters, especially Sohi. Sohi has a background in terrorism. Jyoti Gandhi, she's good at camouflaging her face, her history, and not much is out in the open about her. But these two questionable mayors are running the cities, controlling multi-billion-dollar budgets based on most likely temple votes, Punjab votes that were registered by these religious, hijacked institutions and their brainwashed followers.
I understand you're a secular Canadian. How does it make you feel on a personal level to see your police institutions marching with people who are glorifying terrorists?
I am ashamed to see any government agency, employees such as police officers, marching in extremist parades all over Canada. I find this very shameful. It is not a true representation of Canada. This community, the Sikh community, has been hijacked, and they are being pointed and used by these nefarious organizations to propagate their own agendas.
Thank you very much for giving me the time to interview you. Your insights are very important on this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. For more exclusive news, please consider following Media Bezirgan on Twitter, YouTube, and you could also go to my website, mediabezirgan.com/donate to support my independent journalism. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mocha. My final comments to Canadians is don't let your country be overrun by these radical, extremist organizations that claim to be charitable, that promote hatred and violence, and are nefarious in their conduct. Stop mass immigration. Save the integrity of Canada.